Changing direct speech to indirect speech. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to learn the rules of changing direct speech to indirect speech and vice versa. Change the mode of narration from direct speech to indirect speech and vice versa.
Change the mode of narration of the following sentences. Mode of narration?
What's wrong, Flick? Have you finished your homework?
No, Zizi. I don't understand the meaning of the phrase mode of narration.
Mode of narration tells us whether a sentence is reported in direct speech or indirect speech.
So, that means that the mode of narration could be either in direct speech or indirect speech.
That's right, Flick.
But Zizi, what if we need to change the mode of narration?
Maybe this book has something about changing the mode of narration too. Let's take a look.
The mode of narration of a sentence can be either in direct speech or in indirect speech. A change in the mode of narration of a report depends on the tense of the reporting verb, who is saying what to whom, and the manner of speaking, that is the speaker making a statement or an exclamation, asking a question, giving an order, or making a request. In other words, it is important to ensure that we not only capture the mood of the speaker, but also keep the meaning of the sentence the same. Now, let's look at an example of a statement in direct speech and change its mode of narration to indirect speech. Rahul said, "Roy is my friend." We write this sentence in indirect speech as Rahul said that Roy was his friend. If we look closely at the sentences, you will notice the following changes from direct to indirect speech. First, quotation marks are used only in direct speech. They are not used in indirect speech. The reporting clause and the reporting verb remains the same in both the sentences. As we can see here, the clause Rahul said remains the same in both sentences. In direct speech, a comma is added after the reporting verb. However, in indirect speech, the word that is added after the reporting verb. In the example here, we can see that a comma is used in direct speech and the word that is used in indirect speech. Sometimes the word that may be omitted in spoken or informal English. Also, the possessive adjective my in the quote has changed to his in the report. Based on these differences, we can say that when the mode of narration is changed from direct speech to indirect speech, the tense of the verb, the person of the pronoun, and the possessive adjective in the quote may change. First, let us go through the rules of changing the person of the pronoun from direct to indirect speech in detail. Personal pronouns may have to be changed when changing the mode of narration from direct to indirect speech to make the meaning of the report clear. Let's take some examples to understand this. Rahul said, "Roy is my friend." In the reported speech, this will read as, Rahul said that Roy was his friend. The person of the pronoun has changed from first person in the quote to third person in the report. His refers to Rahul. It will be incorrect to say, Rahul said that Roy was my friend. In this sentence, my would imply that Roy is a friend of the speaker who is reporting and not Rahul's. The pronoun may also change from the second to the first person. Zizi said to me, "I will help you." In indirect speech, this will be, Zizi said she would help me. The person of the pronoun has changed from second person in the quote to first person in the report. So, you has changed to me. Let's look at another example. You are a good friend, Fleck told Zizi. In indirect speech, this will read as, Fleck told Zizi that she was a good friend. In this example, the pronoun you has changed to she in indirect speech. In this example, the person of the pronoun has changed from second to the third person. When a sentence contains two personal pronouns, it may be necessary to change one or both of them depending on the sentence. The personal pronoun may also be replaced with the noun it stands for to make the sentence clear. For example, Rahul asked Fleck, "Is Roy your friend?" When we change this sentence to indirect speech, it will be, Rahul asked Fleck whether Roy was Fleck's friend. Here, we use the possessive form of the noun Fleck instead of the pronoun his. If we say, Rahul asked Fleck whether Roy was his friend, then the speaker could be referring to either Fleck or Rahul, and hence the sentence will be unclear. If the person of the pronoun, which is the subject of a verb, is changed to another person or is replaced with a noun, then the verb must also be changed, if necessary, to agree with the subject in person and number. Let's look at an example here. Rahul says, "I am Roy's friend." Rahul says that he is Roy's friend. The pronoun I is the subject of the verb am. In indirect speech, I in first person changes to he in third person. Therefore, the verb also changes from am to is for it to agree with the new subject he in person and number. Now, let us go through the rules of changing the tense of a verb from direct to indirect speech in detail. When the reporting verb is in the present or future tense, the tense of the verb in the report remains the same as that in the quote. Let's look at some examples. The teacher says, "He is going to the classroom." In this sentence, the reporting verb says is in the simple present tense. This sentence in indirect speech will be, the teacher says that he is going to the classroom. The verb in the quote is going remains the same in the report. The next example has the sentence, the teacher will say, "He went to the classroom." In this example, the reporting verb will say is in the simple future tense. This sentence in indirect speech will be, the teacher says that he went to the classroom. The verb in the quote, went, remains the same in the report. When the reporting verb is in the past tense, then the tense of the verb in the quote usually changes in indirect speech. Look at the sentence, Rahul said, "I play football." Here, the reporting verb said is in the simple past tense. The verb play in the quote is in the simple present tense. So, in indirect speech, we write this sentence as, Rahul said that he played football. The tense of the verb changes from simple present to simple past in the report. We can summarize the change in the tense of the verb from direct to indirect speech in the following table with examples. The verb in the simple present tense changes to the simple past tense. The verb in the present continuous tense changes to the past continuous tense. The verb in the present perfect tense changes to the past perfect tense. The verb in the simple past tense either remains the same or changes to the past perfect tense. The verb in the past continuous tense changes to the past perfect continuous tense. The verb in the past perfect tense remains the same. The helping verbs will and shall that are used in the future tense changes to would or should. The words can and may change their form to could and might. If the words could, would, should and might are used in direct speech, then they do not change their form in indirect speech. The word must either changes its form to had to or remains the same. However, there is an exception to the earlier rule. If the quote or report says something that is still true, then the tense of the verb in the quote does not change even if the reporting verb is in the past tense. Let's look at an example here. The scientist said, "There is gravity on Earth." The reporting verb said is in the past tense. But the fact that there is gravity on Earth is a universal truth and will always be true. So, the tense of the verb will remain as it is in indirect speech. The scientist said that there is gravity on Earth. Sometimes, the adjective, adverb, or expression that denotes time or place may also need to be changed when changing the mode of narration. An example in direct speech will be, Rahul said, "I will play this game next week." This sentence in indirect speech will be, Rahul said, "I would play that game the following week." The adjective this has changed to that. Also, the expression next week has changed to the following week. Let's look at the following table listing some common examples of such expressions that change form in indirect speech. This changes to that or the. That changes to those or the. Here changes to there. Now, as seen in the example, changes to then. Today changes to that day. Tonight to that night. Tomorrow to the next day or the following day. And last night changes to the previous night or the night before. Similarly, there are a few more expressions that need to be changed in a similar manner. A sentence in direct speech can be a statement, question, exclamation, or an order. We have already seen the rules for changing a statement to indirect speech. Now, let's look at the rules of changing a question form to indirect speech. Let's look at a question in direct speech. Fleck said to Zizi, "Can you help me?" This question in indirect speech will be, Fleck asked Zizi whether she could help him. Let us study the changes taken place in the sentence from direct to indirect speech. First, the question mark is omitted for a sentence in indirect speech. In the example here, the question mark has been replaced with a full stop. The reporting verb in direct speech is replaced with a word of inquiry such as ask or inquire in indirect speech. In this example, the reporting verb said has been replaced with the word of inquiry asked. Words such as if or whether may be used in indirect speech. In the example here, the word whether has been used in indirect speech. A question word such as who, what, when, where, and so on, when used at the start of a quote in direct speech, is repeated in indirect speech. For example, Fleck said, "What is the lesson about, Zizi?" This sentence in indirect speech will be, Fleck asked Zizi what the lesson was about. Here, we can see that the question word what used in direct speech has also been used in indirect speech as well. Let us study the rules of changing an exclamation in direct speech to indirect speech. Let's look at an example of such a sentence in direct speech. Fleck said, "Oh, I cannot understand the lesson." In indirect speech, this will be read as Fleck sadly exclaimed that he could not understand the lesson. When changing the mode of narration of an exclamation, the exclamatory sentence in direct speech is changed into a statement in indirect speech. In the given example, the quote, "Oh, I cannot understand the lesson," is an exclamatory sentence. The reporting verb said is replaced with a suitable verb such as exclaim, cry, wish, etc. In this example, the reporting verb said has been replaced with the verb exclaimed. Words like "oh," "alas," "hurrah," etc. are omitted. Instead, words or phrases that convey the same expression are used in indirect speech. Here, the word "oh" is omitted. Instead, the word "sadly" is used to convey the expression of sadness. In indirect speech, the exclamation mark is replaced with a full stop since the exclamatory sentence is changed into a statement. Now, let's look at the rules to be followed when changing the mode of narration for orders, requests, or advice from direct to indirect speech. First, the reporting verb is replaced with a suitable verb such as order, command, request, or advice. Other words like beg, forbid, warn, etc. may also be used depending on the tone of the sentence. The verb of the reported speech is changed to an infinitive. Let us study the changes that take place in changing an order or request in direct speech to indirect speech with the help of the following examples. "Help me pick up the books," said Zizi to Fleck. In indirect speech, this will be read as Zizi requested Fleck to help her pick up the books. In this example, the reporting verb said has been replaced with the verb requested in indirect speech. The verb help is changed to the infinitive form to help. The old man said to the boy, "Do not disturb me." In indirect speech, this will be read as the old man commanded the boy not to disturb him. In this example, the reporting verb said has been replaced with the verb commanded in indirect speech. The expression do not is changed to the infinitive form not to. We have seen the changes that take place in a sentence when changing from direct speech to indirect speech. Now, let us look at some examples of changing a sentence from indirect speech to direct speech. Study the following examples. Fleck told Zizi that he wanted to play outside. This sentence in direct speech will be, Fleck said to Zizi, I want to play outside. Zizi asked Fleck if he wanted to read a book. This sentence in direct speech will be, Zizi said, Fleck, do you want to read a book? Fleck requested Zizi to explain the lesson to him. This sentence in direct speech will be, Fleck said to Zizi, please explain the lesson to me. Fleck thanked Zizi for explaining the lesson to him. This sentence in direct speech will be, Fleck said to Zizi, thank you for explaining the lesson to me. The changes made to the sentence from indirect to direct speech have been highlighted. Keeping in mind the above changes, let's make a note of the important points to remember while changing indirect to direct speech. The reporting verb in indirect speech changes to said or say in direct speech. If the reporting verb is in the past tense, then the tense may change in direct speech. The statement in indirect speech may change to a question, exclamation, or command form, so the full stop may change to a question mark or exclamation mark accordingly. For questions, exclamations, orders, and requests, suitable expressions are used to convey the meaning of the report. For orders and requests, the infinitive form of the verb in reported speech changes to the command form.
Thanks, Zizi. I understand this lesson much better now. Your book was a big help.
Sure, Fleck.
Hey, Zizi, we can do our homework later. Let's go to the park now.
All right, Fleck, let's go. We can finish this when we come back.
Zizi's book was really helpful, wasn't it? Before we go out and play, let's run through all the points we have learned in the lesson on direct and indirect speech. A change in the mode of narration may depend on the tense of the reporting verb, who is saying what to whom, the manner of speaking. When changing the mode of narration of a statement, the reporting verb and the reporting clause remains the same. In direct speech, a comma is added after the reporting verb. However, in indirect speech, the word that is added after the reporting verb. The tense of the verb, the person of the pronoun, and the possessive adjective in the quote may change. Personal pronouns may have to be changed when changing the mode of narration from direct to indirect speech to make the meaning of the report clear. If a sentence contains two personal pronouns, it may be necessary to change one or all of them depending on the sentence. It can also be replaced with the noun it stands for. When the reporting verb is in the present or future tense, the tense of the verb in the report remains the same as that in the quote. In direct speech, if the reporting verb is in the past tense, then the tense of the verb in the quote usually changes in indirect speech. If the quote or report says something that is still true, the tense of the verb in the quote does not change when changing the mode of narration, even if the reporting verb is in the past tense. If the pronoun to be changed is the subject of the sentence, then the verb must accordingly also be changed for the subject-verb agreement in terms of person and number. If the person of the pronoun changes, then the verb will also change, for it must agree with the subject in terms of person and number. Sometimes the adjective, adverb, or expression that denotes time or place may also need to be changed when changing the mode of narration. For example, now changes to then and tonight changes to that night. When changing the mode of narration of a question, the question form in direct speech is changed into a statement form in indirect speech. The question mark is omitted for a sentence in indirect speech. The reporting verb in direct speech is replaced with a word of inquiry in indirect speech. Words like if and whether are used as conjunctions in indirect speech. A question word used in direct speech is repeated in indirect speech. When changing the mode of narration of an exclamation, the reporting verb said is changed into a suitable verb like exclaim, cry, wish, etc. Words like oh, alas, hurrah, etc. are omitted. Instead, words or phrases that convey the same expression are used in indirect speech. The exclamation mark is replaced with a full stop. The quote in direct speech is first changed into a statement and then converted into the report in indirect speech. When changing the mode of narration of commands or requests from direct to indirect speech, the reporting verb said is changed to a suitable verb like ordered, requested, or advised. The reporting verb is changed to an infinitive. There are some important points to remember while changing indirect speech to direct speech. The reporting verb in indirect speech changes to said or say in direct speech. If the reporting verb is in the past tense, then the tense may change in direct speech. The statement in indirect speech may change to a question, exclamation, or command form, so the full stop is changed to a question mark or exclamation mark accordingly. For questions, exclamations, orders, and requests, suitable expressions are used to convey the meaning of the report. For orders and requests, the infinitive form of the verb in reported speech changes to the command form.